My great pleasure today to welcome Cheng Lei for the Sydney launch of her book, A Memoir of Freedom. I think many of us are familiar with at least the broad outline of Lei's story. 3 years plus in detention in China on charges of leaking state secrets to a foreign organisation, and then her eventual release in October 2023. Now, this book is an extraordinary telling of those 3 years. It has large doses of Kafka and Cold War-like tales of Soviet political prisoners, mixed in with scenes which, frankly, would not be out of place in a TV prison drama like Prisoner or Wentworth.
Before I get to how it felt to write the book, I want to show you what it was like for me 2 years ago in Dahongmen Nanlu, number 47, in Fengtai district of Beijing, a most horrible place that I hope disappears one day, and I hope all of my cellmates and other inmates can get out of there as soon as they can. At 6:30, piano music sounds. Poor Beethoven, it's Fur Elise. That's just ruined that piece of music for me. And I would have already been staring at the ceiling for a while, counting the tiles, 13 across, 6 down, and also looking very longingly at the streak of sunshine through the 2 layers of windows. And I get up and race to the transparent loo, and then I start my morning exercises. I missed swimming so much. I would do these ones and, pretend that I was actually going through the 4 strokes. And for each stroke, I would envision a different body of water in Australia, be it Manly here in Sydney, or Omeo Rex in Perth, or wherever I had swum, even the Murray River in Victoria. You have no new stimuli. You don't see anyone. Nobody has new clothes, or you don't feel the weather. Even the exercise enclosure is enclosed. So you don't feel the wind one day I smelled the rain and I was so grateful. And now here I am on Blythe Street in this beautiful building, and able to tell my story. People ask me, was it cathartic? Was it triggering, traumatic? I say, yeah, all of the above, but ultimately it's bloody great. It's empowering because it's such a secret place, secret system there. I was so often warned before the embassy visits, one word about your case and you lose visit rights altogether. So after all that secrecy, after being warned, don't go writing a book now, here I am, free, and free to express, free to communicate, free to share. And people ask me, what was the thing that you missed most? I missed feeling human. I missed feeling like myself. I missed feeling alive. And here I am, all of those things. And I'm so happy to share that with you.
One of the striking things for me was that it wasn't, you'd be entitled to be angry, but it wasn't an angry book.
I'm not an angry person. I feel anger eats away at me, and anger does not make me a better person. So I would rather think about what I can do better, think about whether I can make some fun out of a very grim place, and whether I can help somebody like my cellmate who was also always washing hands.
That was Skinny.
Yes.
All the cellmates have particular names in the book. Not their real names, of course.
No, unfortunately.
Let's just go back to why you were there. The allegation is leaking state secrets to a foreign organisation. The particulars of that allegation are texting an element about economic policy in the annual Premier's speech called the Work Report in China, about economic policy 7 minutes before the embargo.
So before I get to the nitty-gritty of that, I want to share with you a timeline. So April 19, our foreign minister calls for or then Foreign Minister, calls for an independent investigation into COVID, into the source of COVID. April 23rd, China starts surveilling Australians in China, myself included, and I know of one other. I don't know of more people.
But you discovered about this surveillance years later.
At the trial, yes, a year and a half later. And I was arrested in August, on August 13th. And this alleged breaking of embargo happened in May 22nd. And the embargo time, 7:30, was not made clear until a year later when the prosecutor said to the case officer, you don't have a document that says it was embargoed. So it's not like we've all received press releases that says this is embargoed until such and such a time. So it could have been the fact that when they raided my apartment, they saw that document there and it makes for a so-called complete evidence chain. Or it could be they couldn't find anything else and this was handy and they could coerce my former colleagues to give false testimonies that they told me was classified. And it could be that any of the evidence that was favorable to me wasn't admitted, like the fact that I shared this so-called classified document with others.
And of course, in the system, you can't test any of that evidence. You have no rights to cross-examine witnesses against you, test anything like that, right?
Are you joking?
So, of course, this was meant to be, quote unquote, a state secret. What is a state secret in China?
I used to think, and I said this at the interrogation, that I thought state secrets related to the number of rockets or defense. And as it turns out, that understanding is massively wrong, because under Xi's China, the concept of state security has been broadened to 16 areas, everything from what's in the sea to culture to media, health. The things I know of that are state secrets, an inmate got a life sentence for telling a foreign reporter about an official's assets. I know the general manager of an African subsidiary of a Chinese state-owned company got 11 years for disclosing correctly the amount of polluted water the company was releasing into that country's rivers. But then, of course, that subsidiary was fined, and therefore this person had to go to jail as punishment because he should have lied.
Well, in your case, a state secret was something the Premier said.
Yes, in
5 minutes
public
beforehand.
to the world.
Yes.
But no matter, because they're always closed trials. And some of the other people who were locked up with me for having had lunch with a Japanese diplomat. And this year, earlier in the year, at a trial, the court or the judge in Beijing No. 2 court said all Japanese diplomats are spies. And that was why this person had to be sentenced to 7 years for associating with spies.
So anything can be a state secret and almost anybody can be a spy, essentially.
Yes.
Yeah. So another interesting thing about the book is you went into it just briefly just then. You didn't go much into the why you were arrested. You haven't really discussed theories about this. At the time, I remember being back in Australia and people thinking, why? I think you made some Facebook posts critical of China's handling of COVID. But are you, with the benefit of hindsight, clarity, seeing documents, convinced you it was a hostage taking because of the bilateral relationship going downhill?
Definitely. Whether they chose other targets and whether they could have released me earlier, as in once they found out that their suspicions were unfounded. I think also the fact that I had been doing pilots for a show that was cooking and dining with ambassadors, may have put me in the crosshairs. Now that I know how China feels about diplomats, the fact that I was going to embassies where they presumably couldn't surveil me made me seem more suspicious.
If cooking with powerful people was a crime, I think Annabelle Crabb would be in jail by now, wouldn't she? You know, one of the other striking things, of course, you know, it's a cliche. I've never served time in prison, but, you know, you get in there and you say, what are you in for, mate? And in your case, you couldn't discuss with the other inmates what they were charged with. That was a secret.
Nobody could tell each other your names or what you did to get there. But if you trusted them after some time, because you're with these people 24/7, what else are you going to talk about? It's
You worked it out in many cases, I think.
yes, I mean, it's what journos do, right? You're professional gossips and you try to eavesdrop and suss people out.
Right, and you sort of piece it together.
That's right. Ask questions.
It is very Shawshank Redemption again. You were sort of communicating with people in the next cell by tapping in a kind of Chinese Morse code, right?
Yes, we used the English alphabet.
Right.
And so Z would be 26 knocks. And you have to knock really hard because their wall's extremely thick. But it's priceless to be able to communicate with people in the same boat who you know are there and living the exact same way as you are and feeling the same misery, but you will never meet because that's how it is.
You have to be precise, though. If you go 25 knocks instead of 26,
Yep, then you lose the whole thing.
lose the thread.
Yeah. And you have to have, so we worked in the team. I would be counting, and then a cellmate would be deciphering, and then someone else would be putting it together.
Right. Like a Morse code team.
And also because, I don't know if, I guess the Chinese people in the audience might know this way of learning music, which was to translate do, re, mi, fa, sol into numbers, as in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I would try to hum the number of a neighbor cellmate, inmate, and communicate that way. And also remember phone numbers by changing the numbers into music. So that was how I remembered my cellmate's mum's number.
Since your release, and also along with Sean Tennell, who was detained in Myanmar, he's a fellow at Lowy, Kylie Moore Gilbert in Iran, you've started a group about trying to get more creative or better ways to get Australians out of arbitrary detention overseas. So I'd like you to apply that to your case. You know, I think DFAT worked very hard to get you out. You know, you've got the benefit of hindsight. We all do. I mean, applying what you and Kylie and Sean have talked about, could your case have been handled better? Could more pressure have been induced, do you think? I mean, it's a hypothetical, but I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
I think China was definitely looking for a change in government. So once that happened, after the election in 2022, things began to look brighter. I got one phone call with my kids, the only one, even though the embassy officials had been lobbying on my behalf all the 2 years before that. It was after Prime Minister Albanese and Xi Jinping met in 2022 that I got that phone call.
So that improved relationships. Now, I don't want to, you know, adjudicate on the previous government or this government. But there was you know, that flowed directly down to you and your treatment or privileges, if you like.
Yes. And I feel that thanks to ordinary Australians, thanks to my media peers who kept the story alive, that public pressure led to more political motivation to do something, because anyone can be complacent. We can all be here and just conveniently forget people who have lost freedom. But if it's in our face all the time, then we might do something about it.
Yeah, it's hard to know what works, isn't it? Because you get you get the cultural mumbo jumbo sort of stuff, or got to be important, don't embarrass the Chinese. But then we had a petition organized by your Sky colleague,
Annalise Nielsen.
Annalise Nielsen. We had your love letter to Australia in
Yes.
the newspapers and the like.
Which my dad said, don't go public. Because he was of the old school view that going to the media would antagonize China further, and there would be a backlash. But I don't see it that way. I would rather suffer any backlash, if any. But to be honest, the fact that people were concerned about me made the detention center people treat me, if not better, then at least they were wary about doing
More
anything
careful.
dodgy. Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, it certainly seems to me that at certain stages, publicity absolutely helps
Yes,
or can help.
I think so.
Yeah. Your views towards China. We had one academic, I think, from UTS saying, Cheng Lei still continues to support keeping lines open to China, engagement with China, whether it be this government's policy or another in general terms. But all the journalists just report the negative things about her detention, but not her somewhat counterintuitive potentially views about engaging with China. So give us your sentiment on that. You've got to separate your personal experience away from the sort of bigger diplomatic relationship.
China's our biggest trading partner. That's a fact. We have 1.4 million people of Chinese heritage living in Australia. That's a fact. China does awful things to control and punish its citizens and foreign citizens. That's a fact. I think people should be more informed about China and Chinese people, and also separate those two for most cases. We should take people as we find them. I didn't know about it then, but once I heard about the racism, racist attacks against Chinese Australians during COVID, I was horrified. Don't forget, many Chinese people left the regime to come here, and they are as critical of the Chinese regime as others. So if we make this country anything less than the open, fair, and kind nation that it is, then we may as well be living under a repressive regime. So what happened is a reminder for us to be better.
I know I didn't realize this. The word they use in America for people intimidated by, foreign actors in their own country, swatted. Sort of threatened. Have you been swatted or threatened after the publication of this book by anonymous people at all?
I can't read Chinese comments on anything because they are so vile. And whether they're by state-sponsored bots or trolls or very vicious Chinese people, it just says something about, we all say X or Twitter is a cesspit, but that's nothing compared to the Chinese comments that I get. But that's motivation, again, to practice kindness and to do something for people who are still imprisoned. One thing I found very interesting was that while my daughter had to go to boarding school because my mum couldn't look after two kids, especially during COVID. So she's in this boarding house, and in the same boarding house was the granddaughter of a Chinese leader. So you have these Chinese leaders who are full of ideological slogans, and then they send their families to these horrible, democratic countries. And you also have people who talk up China. And I bet if you ask them, would you relinquish your foreign citizenship and live permanently in China? I think the answer would be no.
I'm Sandy from SBS Chinese. So our audience are very care about how has your life been since you come back to Australia, and also what's the central messages you want the readers to take away from the book.
How does one even describe what regained freedom and, the joy of rebirth is like? The fact that I see color, the fact that I can tuck my arms into bed, the fact that I can hug not just my kids, my family, but hug friends, seeing the sun, feeling it on my face, all of it is overwhelmingly wonderful. And I'm almost perversely grateful to have been tormented so much that I get to experience this wild upside. I want people to have a more nuanced understanding of China, and I want them to, again, separate the regime from the people and to speak up for freedom, to practice their freedom.
What do you think the point of the system is? I mean, other systems, you have deterrence. To have deterrence, you have to have publicity. So you have show trials. You can have reformation, perhaps as an outcome of the objective, or you can have sort of communal vengeance. What do you think the point of this prison system actually is?
It's to intimidate. It's to show that under China's present, because they had a new anti-espionage law and these newly drawn boundaries of state security, that especially foreigners, it's better to shut up, not ask questions, not be informed, and instead be manipulated by the narrative that they have. I think the whole system's point is to guard against truth, guard against open views. I think in my case, it backfired on them because of the optics of the negative sentiment that many Australians now hold against China. And it might have been a mistake. They might have thought I was some super spy, because when they grilled me about ASIO and I said, no, I haven't been recruited, they said, why not?
Pay wasn't high enough. Okay, thanks. On that note, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. A special thanks to Cheng Lei for being so open and frank with us. And I absolutely believe it's a terrific book, and you can buy it on the way out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.